Hi, guys. My name is Jack Wagner, your digital classmate in violence in media. And today I am here to present to you how to reduce the impact of violence in media on your life. So it seems that almost every piece of media we encounter, or at least one piece of media that we encounter in our day-to-day lives, pertains to violence. When I prepared for this project that day, which was April 5th, some of the top stories of that day were, they don't care about us. Uvalde students leave school and walk out over gun safety. Obviously, that article, its violent context is that it pertains to the tragic school shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas. And obviously, guns are a mode of violence, so there's the violence in that article. Another article was McCarthy meets with Taiwan's president as China vows retaliation. Obviously, that pertains to something that's morbidly violent, warfare. And then the third article I include here is Cash App founder Bob Lee fatally stabbed in San Francisco. And I would say the violence in that is self-explanatory. And in this conversation, violence in media often comes in the form of social media. For younger audiences like myself and probably like some of the viewers of this video, these platforms are like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and then for myself, Twitter. A lot of my news that I get in my personal daily life, I do consult Twitter just to get a good snapshot of perhaps some of the things that are going on in the world. But with all this violence in our media and in our social media, we have to stay vigilant and recognize that we are being fed violent media by these social media companies, and recognize that they do have algorithms that prey on us via violent media. A personal example from my life of this, and kind of why I did this topic, is the Idaho murders. I know it kind of sounds ridiculous talking about such a mainstream thing affecting me, but I remember seeing the one of the videos on TikTok about that murder, and it was morbidly fascinating. And so on TikTok, I just kept scrolling, and then another video popped up, and I, like the good TikTok user I am, watched it, and then in no time, the algorithm just kept feeding me and feeding me and feeding me and feeding me these videos pertaining to this murder. And then after a while, you read so much about this tragic murder where four people that are my age are murdered brutally and horrifically in their home asleep. It starts to weigh on your mind, and it weighed on mine. And so I had to recognize that I was being fed this content, and I had to take actions to adjust not seeing that content anymore, because I recognized it was affecting me. And I will stop there because that does tie into something later into this presentation that I'll get to momentarily. So one of the first kind of areas in social media where violence and violent feelings and other kind of just angry feelings can arise is in an echo chamber. The image on the right-hand side there does do a very good job of describing what an echo chamber is. It's when you say something, your opinion, and you are part of an online community, whether it be your Twitter followers are tailor-made to your opinions only, whether it's a Reddit thread or however you may. It's where you say that opinion online, and then it bounces off the metaphorical wall, and someone says that same exact opinion to you, and now you feel right. And it is an endless loop of feedback of, hey, I had the same opinion as you. You're right. You're right. You're right. And theoretically speaking, it could be a good thing if your opinion is, I love all people, or the world is great. You know, if you're in a feedback loop, an echo chamber, where people are telling you, the world is great, then that is a great echo chamber to be in. But oftentimes that is not the case. And an echo chamber, it's not the case for that. In an article titled "Political Effects of the Internet and Social Media" by Zuharovskaya et al., it states that people surrounding themselves with like minds on Facebook concur with a more homogeneous voting pattern, and that there is a correlation between xenophobia, hate crimes, and social media, and that an increase in the penetration of social media increased the incidence of hate crimes in cities with a high baseline level of nationalist sentiment prior to the introduction of social media. So to kind of sum that up, in areas where there was a national sentiment, you introduced social media into that community, and violent hate crimes and xenophobia started to arise in those communities. And this is something that is prevalent that you can see in media nowadays. You probably hop on Twitter and look at it. This is something that happens a lot. Are very horrific, terrible opinions, thoughts, ideologies being just fed back through social media and back on them in echo chambers, and that does affect the violence in the real world. Another point Zuharovskaya does point out is that social media penetration a persuasive effect, especially for young and uneducated individuals. And those effects inadvertently change their attitudes as a result of social media experience. And that does make sense because young people are more tended to use social media platforms than, let's say, our grandparents, who are more old-fashioned, let's say, and get in their media through like a newspaper or a television news site or something of that kind. So we young people especially have to be vigilant to violence in our social media, because we are more likely to use these social media platforms. And just to point out the image here to the left, that is kind of how a lot of our society, young people and whomever really uses social media feels. It's like a chain around you. It is a chain to your phone, chain to Twitter. It is an addiction, and oftentimes not a very good addiction. In another article titled "Social Media as a Vector for Youth Violence," a review of the literature by Patton et al., they state, as extremely shocking and rare events such as school shootings have become objects of fascination for some youth, and social media has provided individuals with a forum to find others with similar radical and deviant opinions. This not only does harken back to the Uvalde article that was previously mentioned, but this also kind of links back to echo chambers as well. People get these radical opinions, and then they find people online that share those opinions, and then that feedback loop of an echo chamber starts. And then as you get into that echo chamber, people agree with you, and the conversation develops, and it drives you essentially to commit the act physically. And in the case of a school shooting, it can, or any physical manifestation of these ideologies can have just gruesome and terrible effects. Also, on this sort of echo chamber sort of thing, you can also kind of perhaps tie it back to TikTok trends as well. Back a few years ago when TikTok started getting popular, you can observe a lot of these kind of dangerous trends arising in young kids. Like this sounds a little ridiculous to mention, but the Tide Pods challenge rings to bell when thinking about this. With that, Patton also states that these online platforms can encourage people to partake in high-risk sexual activities, which also could lead to sexual violence, as well as drinking and smoking. Patton also states social media can create a space for youth to learn about ways of committing suicide and others who have done so, and that online engagement with a prior suicide may even motivate them to replicate the event. Obviously, sort of just to kind of sum up that sentence, in a terrible way, monkey see, monkey do. And which is another horrible thing when it comes to suicide. A life is on the line in this case. So with all of this terrible things, thinking about social media and how that affects us, you can escape it. Obviously, you can't escape your phone entirely, but you can escape in some forms and better your life when struggling with these problems. Some ways to break free, and there are plenty of them, is simply putting your phone down. This is where I'd like to introduce the weekly well-being theme and communication theme for this slideshow, is to be present. Be present in the moment when you are sitting around, perhaps with your families, your friends, instead of scrolling on social media. Be present. Spend the physical time with them. Converse with them instead of conversing with people on your phone, because really that is the best for your mental health in combating online effects, is just to enjoy the physical world surrounding you instead of the digital world. It could be reading a book. It could be reading a book. If you just need to de-technologize, I know that's not a word, but you need to de-technologize for a little bit. Put the phone down, pick up a book, perhaps go on a walk, talk to your friends in person, maybe perhaps go to dinner with them, perhaps go to dinner with your parents, talk to your parents, mow the yard, whatever it is. Be present and enjoy the physical world around you. That is the weekly well-being theme here. And that does tie into one of the ways to break free is simply putting your phone down. Set it down. It's hard to, I know I have problems doing that as well. Sometimes you just have to recognize that all right, I've been on my phone way too much today. I'm just going to set it aside. To kind of further that as well, you can also utilize built-in screen time functions on your phone. I do know iPhone does have a function called screen time, and you can limit stuff on there and play with it. I haven't used it personally, but I do know that is a feature that I've seen on my phone. With that, if social media is also a problem in your life, you can do a social media cleanse. You can completely delete all social media. I know that kind of sounds radical and scary, but you say, hey, what people do I need to keep in touch with the most? And if that some person, get their cell phone number and say, hey, I'm not going to be on Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter or Facebook for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Here's my number. If you need me, reach out to this number, but I am going to be off social media. You can do that as well. And I've actually heard people in my circles also do the same thing. Which if like I said before, if social media is an issue, that is something you can also turn to. Also the image right under me is the album cover of Queen's single "I Want to Break Free." I won't burden you with recreating the song on here, but it is a good song, and it's in this context you can also break free from social media as well. An additional method I do want to talk about is consuming eudaimonic media in your life to combat the violent effects that violent media could have on you. And we did just discuss this in lecture just last week. So to kind of just sum it up for you, in when you consume violent media, it'll make you feel negative. Like to harken back to what I just said about the Idaho murders in my life. I had to go through my social media and TikTok more so than any of the others. And I recognize that the algorithm is getting me here. The algorithm is just suggesting these videos because I watched a lot of them, but they're starting to affect me. So I actually went back into my TikTok and I searched up things that I love and weren't necessarily violent, but I knew they would inspire a positive feeling inside of me rather than the negative, anxious, nervous feeling that those murders gave me. And so I literally went on TikTok and I searched up all positive stuff that I loved. If you can tell by my background, I searched up Star Wars and watched Star Wars videos and scrolled endlessly watching Star Wars videos. And then I'd go back onto my TikTok page and then slowly see if, all right, we're finally getting rid of those murder videos. And then if I ever saw one pop up randomly, I scroll right past it real quick. And then I eventually just it fell off my social media and I slowly forgot about it and I was better for it. Other ways to do this is to watch a feel-good show. Like for me, Friends is a great feel-good show. Makes you feel warm and fuzzy. Another example in this class of this eudaimonic media is actually the Mr. Rogers documentary we watched in class. I remember I finished watching it and I just felt so warm and fuzzy inside because when I was little, I did watch Mr. Rogers a good bit. I really enjoyed him. So to kind of see that, it was just like, oh, so warm and fuzzy. And then after watching that, it was so positive and so tear jerking almost. I was in no mood to watch anything that was violent, action-packed. I wanted to watch something nice and positive. So instead of, if watching violent shows like You, I know that's a really popular one out right now, or Law and Order, SVU, I know that gets pretty violent, or any violent shows in their core, I'm turning to something lighthearted, friends, and like the image below me, Full House as well. That is also a wonderful, wonderful, positive show. So we are at the end of this presentation, and I just want to say that we have a lot of violence in our media, but it is escapable. It is escapable by consuming positive media. It is escapable by just simply putting down your phone, and it is escapable by the weekly well-being theme I mentioned, of being present, enjoying what is actually around you, versus what is on your device tailored by companies' algorithms. Not to drag on too long here, but one thing to kind of go back to a point that was first talked about in this course, was people thought that something was more likely to happen to them when they saw it on TV. So like a murder would portray on TV and they would think I am more at risk to be murdered than actually what they were. And if in that case, if they would have just been present and enjoyed the physical world around themselves, they wouldn't be so worried about bad things happening to them as the television portrays them. So thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful rest of your semester. Good luck on finals and have a wonderful summer. And considering my Star Wars theme background here, as they say, may the Force be with you always.